Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our discussion panel, Equity and Diversity in the Great Outdoors, Birders and Naturalists. My name is Victoria, and I'm a library associate with the Arlington Public Library. We have with us tonight 3 naturalists from the Arlington and DC area, and I'm excited for you to meet them. In a second, I will be turning over hosting duties to your guests, but before we get started, I'd like to take a moment and point out a few things. All attendees will be muted during the webinar. This means you don't have to worry about muting yourself. After the initial discussion, there will be a question and answer period during which we will try to answer as many of your questions as possible. Questions can be submitted through the Q&A icon at the bottom of the Zoom window, or by tapping the screen of your device to make the menu bar appear with the Q&A option. If you think of a question during the presentation, feel free to go ahead and type it in the Q&A box, but we will hold off until our guests finish speaking to answer them. Presentation materials will not be made available after the event. However, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the Arlington Library's YouTube channel. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce you to our 3 committed local naturalists. First, a woman who is not only an environmentalist, community volunteer, and educator, but who has the distinction of being the first Black female forester in the United States Forest Service, where she served for 28 years. Welcome, Melody Starya Mobley. Our next panelist is a global birder who grew up in Sudan to a Bedouin family. He learned from a young age to identify all living things found during his family's travels. Since immigrating to the US in 1999, he has traveled to 41 states in pursuit of birds and other natural wonders. He serves as a board member of the Audubon Society of Northern Virginia and has co-led a birding and nature program for underserved communities at Upton Hill Regional Park in Arlington. Musa Murawih, thank you for joining us. Sorry, we just rehearsed that. Our third panelist was born in Washington, D.C. and began her career in nature as a seasonal park ranger in the Arlington area. She is a park naturalist with the Arlington County Nature Centers and a 10-year Arlington Regional Master Naturalist volunteer. As a full-time museum specialist in the Department of Invertebrate Zoology at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History, she works on worldwide research collections and photographs a variety of mollusks and other invertebrates. It's great to have you here, Yolanda Villacampa.
Thank you.
Okay, I am going to turn off my video and audio, and let's see. Okay, take it away, Melody.
There we are. I had a bit of trouble unmuting myself. I apologize, everyone. So my name is Melody Starya Mobley. It's very important to me to share my full name because I am a quarter Cherokee American, and Starya means stay strong, which I certainly had to do in my 45 years as a professional forester. This picture is me being a little tree hugger when I was only 3 years old in Seattle, Washington. So even when I was young, I knew that I had a great love of nature. Mom didn't have a lot of money raising my brother, sister, and I. So she would often take us out in the country just to explore and enjoy nature. After she passed away when I was 15, I knew that I had to get myself out of Louisville, Kentucky, where I was born, or I would never become a professional person. So I ended up going my first year of college to the University of Louisville in zoology, and then moved myself across country to study with someone who had practiced martial arts with Bruce Lee and became the first African-American woman to graduate in forest management from the University of Washington in Seattle. I was the first Black female forester in the USDA Forest Service. And the difference between the Forest Service and the Park Service is that the Forest Service is multiple use. We do logging and bring cattle onto the land. We burn areas intentionally if it's a natural part of the ecosystem and take other management activities. The National Park Service under the Department of Interior has a mandate of preservation, which, as I'm sure you all know, it's impossible to preserve nature in a static state. So my first duty station was up in Seattle, Washington. And this uniform you see on the left-hand side of your screen is now in the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. And my name is also on the Wall of Honor in the National Museum of the American Indian, part of the Smithsonian. I'm also the subject of a documentary film being made by Camden and Spencer Miller, the Miller brothers out of Montana. So quite a bit is going on in my life still. A lot of people think that the national forests aren't beautiful like national parks, but this is a picture from my first duty station up in the Cascade Mountains. As I mentioned, the Forest Service is multiple use: logging, bringing cattle onto the land, and other management activities, human activities. But for me, it was a real love of nature that brought me to the Forest Service. It wasn't just their mandate or their mission. I'd never even heard about the Forest Service until I was in my second year of college. And the reason the Forest Service wanted me, quite frankly, was because they wanted their first Black female forester. I wanted to be a zoologist or a wildlife biologist. But by this time, Mom had passed away. My grandmother, who also helped raise me, was very ill with cancer. And so I had to have that permanent job. And the Forest Service offered me one while I was in college. Mind you, I had a lot of fun riding horses, got to go flying around in helicopters, got to do a lot of law enforcement. And I go into the schools now, especially elementary schools, and tell kids that no matter what your professional goals are, there's probably a job for you in the USDA Forest Service. My great love was threatened and endangered species. This is a Florida panther. My last duty station before coming into headquarters was in Florida, where this species is indigenous. I also did a lot of archaeology work as a certified paraprofessional. And now, as I mentioned, I go into a lot of schools and I talk about, here I'm reading a book about Mae Jemison, my idol. And I talk about other women and people of color who have bright futures in STEM if they'll only apply themselves. And these are just some of my kids. I call them all my kids because I love speaking with them and teaching them and seeing their little eyes light up. Finally, I really do care about equity. Right now, if you go out into nature, you rarely see a person of color, especially a Black person. I'm working really hard to try to change that. These two young women happen to be in the movie that's being made about my life, but this is what I care about. All people, all shapes, colors, creeds, being together and enjoying all that nature has to offer. Finally, I want to give all of you my contact information because I think it's very important that you be able to reach out beyond this program with questions, comments, anything you'd like to share. That's my private email address. And yes, that's my private cell phone number where you can directly reach me. I give it to all my students and I want you to have it as well. So I'll just stop for now and ask Musa to share some thoughts with us.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Melody. You guys hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
Yes, Musa.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So let me move this to the side here. Thank you. So I came to the United States in 1999, and before that, I was born and raised in Sudan. Just for a reminder, here is Sudan in Northeast Africa, Egypt to the north, the Red Sea to the east. And to be more exact, this dot here is where generally the area where I come from. Here in the center is the capital city of Khartoum. As a child, I lived with my family in a tent like this one. So this tent is out of wool, camel, and sheep and goat. It looks quite decorated. This is not the natural way. Probably the people in this tent are celebrating an occasion. Typically, it's much more modest and always ready to move. So how do you go to school from a tent like this? You basically go and you stay during the school year in the school, and that is what happened to us. We were taken at about age 6 or 7. We didn't have birth certificates, so we're just estimates. You go to school, they check your mouth. If you're losing some teeth, then you are school age. So that's what happened. And this is an aerial picture of the village. This is, if you can see, this is our school. These are the classrooms, and these barn-looking buildings are basically where we stayed for the school year. On Friday, when we had weekend, we just walked to the village here. Possibly we found someone, a relative, who would buy us palm dates or biscuits or stuff like that. Other than that, we just stayed for the whole school year in the school. So when the school year ends, you find your way home with the help of relatives or on your own. I started traveling on my own when I was in middle school, so about age 13, 14. I'll just go to the nearest person who can lend me a camel, and then I'll just ride a camel. Sometimes you find people traveling, and then you just travel with them. You typically know the geography of the area since you have been moving a lot, and so you know where you're going. So my favorite memory of birds is a sunbird, possibly this beautiful, aptly named beautiful sunbird, or maybe the Nile Valley sunbird. And I just looked at it, and I remember I was probably around 5, maybe 6. And I remember telling my dad, I want a shirt like that. And so this is how it all started. Obviously, when I moved to the United States, it came natural to me to explore my new homeland. First, when I landed 2 weeks after I landed in 99, I took a AAA triptych journey from New Jersey to Colorado, University of Denver. I went there for my graduate school. That took 2 weeks across the kind of the entire length from here, the East Coast to the Rocky Mountains. And then during my stay in Colorado, I toured and traveled in the Four Corner states. I went and visited Southeast Arizona, California, and as you can see this list, I have tried to always go and find where the birds are. And now that I am in the United States, I was able to obviously buy a binocular and have a bird guide and have maps, which obviously all was very helpful. So here in Virginia, I'm involved in a number of activities. Like we heard earlier, I'm a board member of the Audubon Society of Northern Virginia. I'm also a member of Northern Virginia Bird Club and the Friends of Huntley Meadows monthly bird walk. I am a co-leader of a series for Black and Latinx birders. These are nature and bird walks. I'm a surveyor of a 25-mile North American breeding bird survey route. And I have participated in a number of other issues. Internationally, I traveled and birded in Germany, in the United Arab Emirates, in Canada, and in France. And so my life journey might look a bit uncommon, but I think the way I look at it is just I changed my ride basically from this to this. And I think this sums it up for me in terms of the change, because when you look at it really, when it comes to nature, when it comes to the environment, is it really different where you have grown up? Because we might have different human journeys, but most likely all of us are going to be drawing the same lessons. And I have just tried to sum up my lessons into two parts. One of them is I have always seen myself as part of nature, as a species. I want to live in sync with nature, and I want to also respect nature. I also wanted to be part of the community where I live, regardless of which country. I want to connect, and I want to help out my neighbors and the community where I live. And one very interesting story that happened to me on my second year in the United States, I was visiting McCarthy, which is a mining town in Alaska, right at the edge of the Wrangell-St. Elias National Park. A small little town, very close to the mountains, with a glacier right next to it. And I talked to a gentleman there, and I said to him, how do you make a living here? And he said, you know, you just wanted to be part of the community. You never want to be on your own. And I think this lesson really, I found it exactly the same exact thing. McCarthy, Alaska is not North Kordofan in Sudan, but the values are, to me, were the same. So thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and introduce Yolanda. Yolanda, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Bienvenidos a todos. I'm going to show you a slideshow that I made, kind of showing my journey in nature and my career. Some of the slides are going to be in Spanish text, but I'll be speaking in English otherwise. This is a picture at Long Branch Nature Center in Arlington. Maybe some of you are familiar with that who are from the DC area. It's at Poplar Pond at near Long Branch Nature Center. So my journey, oops, hold on, it's not letting me forward. Let's try again. Oh, there we go. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my heritage and how I came to be in Arlington. My mom is from Ecuador, and my dad was born in Spain, and they met and settled in Washington, DC. And then I guess it was 1969 where I was born, and we were still living in DC, but shortly moved to Arlington about a year and a half after I was born. So this is Mom when I was still a little one there in DC, and this is Dad. And my father took us outside a lot. So he liked being outdoors. Growing up at the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains, liked to rock climb. I know he liked being outdoors, and so I think he brought that to my sister and I. He liked to take us to parks locally in DC and Virginia, and to the zoo. My dad was a security officer at the Dumbarton Oaks Museum in DC in the Georgetown area, and so we'd be in DC doing, as toddlers, going to the zoo and the Natural History Museum. My mom would take us on a bus to the Natural History Museum from Arlington when we were there. And this is a picture of the back of our house, where we have a patch of woods. And for those who are familiar with Barcroft Park, this kind of extends to the one end. It reaches South George Mason Drive, so that's at one end of Barcroft Park, but it's a kind of continuation of the woods there. So for whatever reason, I was always drawn to the woods behind my house. I was always looking out my window, looking at the birds or the animals out there and playing in the yard. We had neighborhood kids that we'd play with as well. So vacations. So vacations involved not only going to visit my parents' home country, Spain and Ecuador, but we also traveled a lot. My dad took us a lot through the state parks of Virginia. So we did camping, were in cabins, and we did a lot of road trips. And you know, I really enjoyed that and got familiar with nature that way too. So this is a state park in Virginia. I don't know that I was 5 years old. I have a feeling that was Westmoreland State Park. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that was where we went for the cabin trip. So that was a lot of fun for me as a kid. And in elementary school, if there are some students from Arlington, may be familiar with the outdoor lab. So I think it was 4th grade where we had the class go out to the outdoor lab in a little further west in Virginia, where the Arlington schools have, I guess, a collaboration to have outings there. So I enjoyed that a lot, and I felt very experienced as a kid because I had gone to camping with my family. So I enjoyed that a lot. A little later in high school, I did go to Claremont Elementary, and I went to HB Woodlawn for middle school time. And then when I reached Wakefield, there was, following my animal interest, there was an animal science class that I really enjoyed in my senior year. And I included this shell picture because I really liked photography too. My dad took the camera when we traveled, and I think I was perhaps inspired by that. He showed us how to use a manual kind of camera. And so I'm showing this shell because in high school I didn't know what direction my career path would take me, but so I'm including that there. It happens to be a horse conch that was a souvenir from my mom's aunt in Ecuador. So I believe it was obtained in Guayaquil. So when I decided to go to school, my major was to me pretty easy to decide on. It was biology. So I went to get my biology degree there. And in the meantime, I was looking for summer jobs, and I had several very animal-oriented summer jobs. One was being a veterinary assistant, and also with the animal science class from Arlington, they needed a summer help. So I ended up working there, taking care of the animals there. And one of my jobs that I obtained, I initially applied for being camp counselor for the summer in Arlington County. I didn't get that, but then I got a call to see if I would be interested in a park ranger job. And I thought, wow, that's just as good. So I was really excited about that. And for the next 4 or so years, I had a seasonal park ranger position in Arlington County. Perhaps it's not quite the forester type of job or park service, National Park Service type of park ranger, but it certainly focused on working outdoors and providing safety. We were the eyes of the park, and we got to be on foot, and I could just step out of my house and go to work. It was awesome. And we got to ride our bikes. And I wish I had pictures of my park ranger times, but I do have my park ranger hat that I kept for the longest time. So good memories there. All right, so this is also a picture of Glen Carlin Park. So one of my favorite places to be in Arlington Parks. It's an awesome view of the streams, of the woods. If you get on the WNOD trail or the 4 Mile Run trail, it's an awesome ride to visit. All right, next slide. So after finishing college, I was looking for work, and having found out about the nature centers while working as a park ranger, I interviewed for a position at the nature centers and got the weekender position, working Saturdays and Sundays. My first position there was at Gulf Branch Nature Center in North Arlington. So that was awesome. So great job. And this is where I do programs for kids, families, walks, and some bilingual programs. Hopefully we'll be starting up a little more now that the pandemic is perhaps reaching a certain point where we can do more in-person programs. So it's a lovely park too, and there's a trail that goes to the Potomac River. So that's an awesome hike. I was a little later, maybe a year or so, or I don't remember exactly, was asked to move to Long Branch Nature Center, which is now my home nature center in South Arlington, not too far from my childhood home. And so I agreed to go ahead and move there, but I still do programs at both Long Branch and Gulf Branch Nature Centers. So I continued working there, still looking for a full-time job. And so I went, as at the time, there wasn't exactly the same kind of digital access as there is now. I went in person to the Human Resources office to apply for a job, and there happened to be a museum tech position open to work on freshwater snails from Western United States, and to try and discover new species, basically. And so I got the job and helped describe a bunch of new freshwater species from out west. So that was only a temporary job. So I actually had a couple of part-time jobs and a contract before I I ended up having a full-time position. So that happened, it took a little while, but it happened a few years later. So I work in the Department of Invertebrate Zoology at the Natural History Museum in DC. And it's a great job. I can, continue to work with animals, which has always been the road I wanted to take. So I'm so glad I can still continue to do that. Now, I also learned about relatively, I guess not too long ago, a new program that had started up that I heard through the nature centers about a master naturalist program. And so I had heard about that, and then I finally decided to take the training for it. So I am also a volunteer back at the streams where I played and walked through the parks. Now I get to know what is actually in the streams. And so that was something I decided to do as an Arlington Regional Master Naturalist. And I continue to do that and co-lead the Barcroft Park macroinvertebrate monitoring. So it's to me, I just like learning about all the animals and being able to identify them, be familiar with what is basically in our backyard. So, and this is an area that I just enjoy a lot as a volunteer. There are other volunteer opportunities with the Arlington Regional Master Naturalists, and I really like documenting animals. So here's a couple shots of birds that are right outside my backyard there. I've got parkland behind my home, not too different from the childhood home I grew up with. So I really enjoy that. And here's a catbird, and here's a scarlet tanager. So I thought that was a really nifty bird to see that I don't always see. This is, and that's a male scarlet tanager. Thanks, everybody. So glad that you could join us. I've got some links here if you want to take a look to learn more about Arlington parks and streams and the naturalist programs. Thanks, everybody. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you, Yolanda. That was awesome. All three of those were great. I think before we go a little bit further and get to the question and answer, sorry, there's my video. I think we're going to throw it over to Melody one more time.
Yes, I just wanted to say again, thank you, Victoria, for having us. We really, really appreciate it. And when you first approached me about doing this program, I immediately knew that Yolanda and Musa had to join me on this stage. And you can see why. Their presentations were excellent. And thank you, Musa. Thank you, Yolanda.
Thank you, Melody.
Thank you, Melody.
I just wanted to share with our participants that we've spoken a lot about how much we love nature and our careers and our experiences, but something we didn't touch on too much is some of the tough things about being a woman or a person of color in a natural resource related career. I personally was physically assaulted 3 times. I had my work taken away from me. I was denied promotions that were due me. Things happened that were traumatic and that changed me forever. And I know that you've also, Musa and Yolanda, had some challenging things happen in your career as well. So I just didn't want to leave our guests thinking that it was all easy peasy breezy for us in these professions that we've chosen. And I wanted to just throw out there and ask a question to our participants. Out of about 30,000 employees in the USDA Forest Service today, how many do you all think are Black female foresters? I was the first 45 years ago. Can anybody take a guess? Just put it in the chat. How many Black female foresters you think we have in the Forest Service? Victoria, can you tell us what the guess is? 5%, 50, 2 maybe, 5. Good guesses. 45 years later, we only have 6. And to get that information, I asked the Forest Service, they refused to tell me. I had to go to my senator, Tim Kaine, and get him to write a letter to the Forest Service, and then they answered him. So 45 years to only have 6 Black women who are professional foresters, that says a lot. So I just wanted to share those ideas with you. Musa or Yolanda, did you want to touch on that before we take questions? You don't have to. I know I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this.
I don't have the statistics, Melody, but I'm sure there could be improvements in general.
And I don't have enough information, really.
But Musa, you had shared a story with me that I won't share here, but about how in different parts of the United States, people of color are treated a little different than their white colleagues. And I know all of us have had up and down experiences. Mind you, this is not to say that we don't strongly support and encourage folks to go into our career paths, but something to think about. So we'll take questions now. Victoria, do you have any questions for us?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there are 2 really great questions. The first question I see here is from Richard. How do you encourage, or how can people encourage cultural groups that are not traditionally outdoorsy, in quotes, to try out new activities and groups focusing on the outdoors?
I'll start, and then Yolanda and Musa, if you'd like to jump in. I think about this a lot, and I just wrote a letter and an article that you can find online if you Google my name, Melody Starya Mobley or Melody S. Mobley. Some of the ways that I think we can do this, we need to make sure that everybody feels comfortable. Some of the literature that we have at our parks and national forests is very outdated. I know I worked with topographic maps that had lakes referred to as the N-word lake. That was the title on this map that I had to work with. When I go out in the woods, I don't see a lot of people who look like me. So I invite folks who look like me to go out in nature with me and try to make sure they have a good time. There are programs that Yolanda, Musa, and I participate in, like at Upton Hill Regional Park. We have what's called Black Birders, Naturalist hikes, where we try to encourage people of color to join with us and come out in nature. But we have a long way to go before everybody truly feels comfortable going out in the woods. And it's so important for our health and for other reasons. Did you want to add anything, Yolanda or Musa?
Sure. Musa,
go ahead, Yolanda. You go first.
Sure. I think there certainly has been attempts to reach out to communities. I think there needs to be more, certainly, and we need to be creative in finding ways. I think this collaboration with Upton Hill has been a great start. I saw an announcement with the Master Naturalists about this program, and I said, okay, this is where I can definitely contribute, and I wanted to do that. So I think it's a great start. And I think that just more and more communities will be able to learn about what we do. I think if they see more naturalist programs with multicultural leaders, I think that will just continue to grow the outreach effort. I've done bilingual walks and hikes, but it's not, I guess the news doesn't always get to everyone. And I think that's part of the I guess, way we just need to find a way to reach folks. And certainly writing in Spanish, I've done some translation of signs and programs, and I think there's more of that, and that's great. I think we just continue on that road and find other folks that can help with that. Would be great.
Sure, I'll definitely stress the educational outreach piece. It's very important. I think part of the outreach should be sitting in a figurative sense with these communities, trying to figure out and create partnerships with them, try to figure out why they're not encouraged to do that, and find solutions and work together. I think that's going to be, on the short term, I think that's going to be very important. Also, like we at Audubon, we have Audubon at Home program, in which we help people kind of like bring nature to homes. And that's, I think, is very important on the long term, because you are in the safety of your home and you have your own time and schedule, and you can learn together with your children by, you know, building a pollinator garden or planting new trees, native trees, or just looking at nature in your own backyard. I know not everybody has a backyard, but if you do, sometimes the little things help. If you put, you know, a native flower on your balcony, chances are a butterfly is going to probably show up there. Or if you put a cardinal flower, a hummingbird might show up, depending obviously on where the plant is. So yes, so basically go to nature if you can, encourage that, but also try to bring nature to your home.
Both of you have hit some really key points. Yolanda, you were going to add something?
I was going to mention that I know that there are schools in Arlington that are also doing some science and have outdoor gardens. So that's also a really, really great program to start with.
Yes. And I find for myself, a couple of things I try to do: get on boards of directors. I'm on the board for Eco Action Arlington that's helping to support this program. And then NAACP, I'm on the Environment and Climate Justice Committee. And they're also very supportive of this program and the walks that we do at Upton Hill. So just trying to get our voice at the table where decisions are made about our forests can be important too. Thank you both very much. Victoria, was there another question?
Yeah, there's a few more questions here. Let's see. We have following up to what Musa said earlier, Melinda asks, how can schools, especially Title I schools, play a part in increasing accessibility and equity in nature, keeping in mind seemingly competing mandates for mastery of standards of learning and closing gaps in scores?
I'm happy to start because I'm the chair of the Science Advisory Committee for Arlington Public Schools. And right now, at least in Arlington, science isn't taught every day to every child. We've got to change that. Science is critically important to everything we do as biological beings. So I'm working really hard to push to make sure that our kids are taught science, basic science, every day, just like math, history, social studies, PE, and other things. Yolanda, Musa, did you have something to add?
I think, Melody, that you're in a great position working with some of the elementary schools. So
Right.
perhaps your connection will be one way to get that going. I think that's terrific.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Another question, Victoria?
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. This is anonymous, but thank you for sharing your experiences, both positive and challenging. What advice do you have for staff of small, local, nature-oriented organizations to be more inclusive, welcoming, and accessible to Black people and people of color?
Yolanda, would you like to start us off and I'll jump in?
Can you start us off this time?
I'll start us off. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Okay.
I go back to that article that I just wrote. We have to make the person feel comfortable. One way to do that is by ensuring that they have a mentor. I think mentor-mentee relationships are critically important, and they were just vital to me in being able to succeed as a forester in a predominantly white organization and profession. I think we need to have buddies. We need to, if one child is not succeeding and another is doing very well, pair those children up together so that they can work together on projects. We need to bear in mind that not every family has the financial resources that others do. So we need to make sure when we're giving science and other assignments to be done at home or that require materials that these families have to purchase, we need to be mindful of that and think of ways that we can include everybody. That's why I love DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That way we include, if you will, everybody in fine ways. And I hope the person, whoever submitted that question, will either contact me or search for that article, because there are about 35, 40 ways that I wrote about that we can increase diversity in natural resource related professions. Another question?
Yes, let's see. Marianne asks, Musa, can you describe the pollinator gardens at Upton Hills? Where are they located?
Thank you, Marianne. So this is a project that we started under the leadership of Jill Barker and Evan McGurran, the park manager. We started 2 years ago. And I have a small pollinator garden next to my townhouse. And so it started growing nicely. And so when I started working on these walks, I talked to Jill and Evan, and they thought, okay, that's a good idea. So we started 2 years ago building these gardens. First, we had to remove invasives and obviously fix the soil. One of them, like if you're in the parking lot looking east, yeah, there is the major walk to the right. If you continue on that, when you get to the woods, it's to your left. There is a fence there, deer fence. You will see it, and then on the opposite side of the park, there is the other one. So we're hoping to continue to work on those until we make them self-sustaining.
Thank you. Okay. I have another anonymous question. Should boards of mostly old white people of nature orgs be doing implicit bias training?
I'll start again. I don't want to talk too much, so Yolanda and Musa, just jump right in whenever you feel comfortable. Yes, they should be. I think that's critical, and there are a lot of good resources out there, books, films. Arlington County has a lot of trained facilitators who can provide training for free. I have a good friend who does a lot of work with my church and my professional groups to do racial bias training and other kinds of training. So yes. And we also need to step up and get on those all white boards so that our opinions and positions can be shared with these groups, and so that we have a voice, a vote in the decisions that they're making and how they're managing their lands.
And if I may just add, I think when it comes to nature, maybe that is just me, but when it comes to nature, you really need every ally possible. And I don't look at it within the skin color realm. I want to understand if the person understands that this planet is in peril. And if they do, then that's my ally, regardless of their skin color. I don't want to dismiss the socio-political problems that we go through in the United States, but we need to find a balance between looking forward and also taking care of what happened in the past. And so we don't get tied either, because we need to really save this planet.
Okay, we have another question. We have a few more, actually. We have an abundance of wonderful parks in the DC area. What are your favorite parks and why? And anyone can answer that.
I think I mentioned Glen Carlin Park in Arlington. So again, that's an awesome park. That's where Long Branch Nature Center is. And it's a park that's connected by the trails. So it's easily accessible, and lots of woodland areas. Great views, streams are along it, great birding as well. So I really enjoy it, Glen Carlin Park area. But there's so many parks, even small ones that are accessible and neat. Even Upton Hill Park, awesome. I mean, there is the pool and poolside, and there's the mini golf, which I really liked when I used to go there all the time, like as a kid. But there is the park side, and that's one thing we may not always realize. There's the recreation side, but there's also the woodland areas that are great to go to.
Yeah, my favorite is probably Riverbend, and that is because it's also a wonderful place to go see native wildflowers. It's just starting in the spring, and after, just stunning to go. So it's kind of like combines basically nature and birds and water and wildflowers.
Great time to go in the spring there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Long Branch because of the little pond. It's always got turtles in it, which are among my favorite animals. I really love that. And of course, Great Falls is just phenomenal, very powerful, and not that far away.
Definitely.
Okay, I am going to go to the chat for one of these questions. I would I would ask everyone to please put your Q&A to your questions in the Q&A box. It's a little harder to read them in the chat box, but here we go. Melody, so wonderful to hear your wisdom. One idea too, if you are comfortable sharing, I think some people have not considered that there are some trauma-laden associations, especially for Black people, which is why exposing everyone somehow to the positive side of nature is so important, despite the fearful historical connections.
Yes, that's a very good point. When we, as Black people, think of the woods, oftentimes there were the slave runs and the lynchings that would take place. And they weren't that far in the past, not even 100 years ago since our last lynchings took place. So that value-laden poison associated with some places is really tough to get beyond. But the health and the healing aspects of our forests, our meadows, our wildlands, so far can outweigh those historical atrocities that took place. We just have to replace those horrible memories with positive, healthy experiences today. And that's why sometimes going with a group or a friend or two into nature can help heal these atrocities of the past. Yes.
Another question from, let me just see if I can, I think it's Brianna. It's cut off. I'm sorry. I apologize to the person who's asking. As a homeschooling POC to elementary kids, we rely heavily on programs hosted by nature centers, state and national parks. We are involved in several homeschool co-ops and we follow parks and rec calendars. Are homeschooling communities part of your outreach? How can we get involved either to help in that outreach or be part of current outreach?
Do you want me to start and y'all could jump in? Homeschooling is definitely a part of my personal outreach. I try to contact families who are homeschooling and my family, take them to a local park or invite them on a picnic or try to teach them one tree. I also work with these schools on their local campuses because transportation is often an issue for people of color and for schools. So there's a lot of nature right in Arlington on these school campuses. So yes, homeschooling and those kids are definitely on my radar. And by all means, if you homeschool, take down my number and my email, shoot me an email, and I'd love to get with you and do something with your family or a group of families.
As far as I know, the nature centers do take program requests. I don't know if it's for homeschooling per se, but certainly as far as I know, requests can be made for programs.
Okay, we have another question here. Please ask Melody to repeat the position she occupies as an advisor to Arlington Public Schools.
Yes, I'm the chair of the Science Advisory Committee, SAC, S-A-C, for Arlington Public Schools. And we help build the curriculum for science and talk about everything associated with science in Arlington Public Schools. I also go to Fairfax schools just on my own time and do programs for them. And Washington, D.C. too.
Okay, and Barbara asks, I recently learned about the Magnolia Bog in Arlington. Are there other unique ecosystems in the area? Anyone?
Well, that reminds me of our walks at Upton Hill. I know it's a very small little plant, but
Right.
Is it the fan club moss that it's not a very commonly seen plant that's found at Upton Hill?
We have indigenous plants all through Arlington. I'm not as familiar with them as I am with locations where I was stationed as a working forester, but I'm learning about Virginia indigenous plants. That just means that they occur here naturally. They're a natural part of the ecosystem. And some of them occur here and nowhere else. So it's really cool to learn about those.
Okay, let's see. I have a few questions actually. We seem to be caught up on the Q&A box. Can you describe? I think this might be for Yolanda. What does it mean to be a park naturalist? What would you describe what you do? How would you describe what you do?
Great. Park naturalist. That is a job that I really enjoy, where I am working with the public, working with kids, families, and really sharing knowledge about local nature in the Arlington area in particular. But any programs related to my park naturalist job are always really fulfilling, to be able to share that. And so many of the community members really, I think, appreciate it, and it's always a good time.
Yolanda, how do you become a park naturalist?
So when I was a park ranger and still in school, once I got my biology degree, I was, I guess, eligible to apply. I don't think it's required, but it's, I guess it depends on the position. But once I got my biology degree, it was much more easier to interview and get a job at the nature center. So certainly studies in the area of biology. And I've always liked animals, so that just was very natural for me to fall into that and go in that direction, working outside, learning about the animals and the plants. So
do you find a lot of women and women of color are your colleagues doing that?
There are a few. There's definitely room for improvement there. But I don't know if it's outreach or if it's other reasons, not knowing that positions such as those are around. But yeah, a lot of people, come upon the nature center that's hidden in the woods, and a lot of people say, I didn't know that was here. So people are pleasantly surprised that is, that we have resources in the county like that, and we just need to, I guess, make it known.
Am I right in thinking that you all did a nature interpretive walk at Upton Hill Regional Park together? Is that right?
Yes.
Can you talk
All
about that,
three of
any of you?
us.
Who shows up to those? Little kids, adults? Everyone?
Both. And again, we're just starting that. I guess it's been 2 years, Musa said. So I came in on the second year, and so I guess we had maybe more adults than kids at first, but we definitely, when we had kids, we had really kids that were really interested in that.
That's
and
great.
we want more.
Yeah.
As Yolanda said earlier, we need to work on how we get the word out. Yolanda's been very gracious in sharing her Spanish abilities with us. That's very important to us, and we support it. Thank you for sharing your Spanish as part of this program, Yolanda.
Welcome. You're welcome. So
I'm trying to take a class.
Sure. Terrific.
You're our resource. Thank you very, very much for that.
Happy to do it, and happy to continue reaching to Spanish speakers.
So
I want to just,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Since we're talking about Upton Hill, I just want to send a thank you to Jill and Evan for pioneering this. It's just wonderful that they and their colleagues at the park spearheaded this and made it possible for all of us to be a part of it.
That's right. They've been great collaborators and initiators of this program.
The question I was going to ask was, we heard a little bit about how, excuse me, what it takes to become a naturalist. What would you say, Musa, it takes to become a birder? What is it just the hobby, or what do you, I mean, not just a hobby, it's an amazing activity.
I think, I don't know, maybe I should just talk about myself. So maybe it begins with something that kicks in you. I think it is going to be hard if you just, because not everybody is interested in birding. So, but most birders I know, they have this passion for birds. And I do understand that you can educate your children maybe to have this passion. But it just, to me, birds really represent the best of this planet. First, they are they have this ability to fly, and which is really amazing. And then the vast majority of them are really very colorful and beautiful. You look at them and you go to different continents to see them, and you're just amazed how these combinations of colors are just exist on this bird. And obviously they have this link to the dinosaurs. So they're living things, but they're also, look at a heron flying, and you can't really tell what age we live in, because it's now and it is so long in the past. And obviously there are also indicators for so many things regarding the environment. So to me, I think it starts with this passion for the birds. In my case, where I grew up, you get that education from your parents and your siblings. You basically, you just don't just pass by things without naming them. You need to know this bird, this tree, this plant, and everybody knows it. And so when you carry this with you to another part of the planet, you carry this curiosity with you. Like a funny story, my wife and I were visiting France, and so we were headed out of the airport, and toward Paris, and everyone is expecting Paris and Paris scenes of Paris. And I was asking her, you see that? Do you know what that type of tree is? And because to me, I get fascinated by nature. When I am in a different place, I do want to know what bird this is and what tree this is and what plant that is. And obviously, I don't know all of them, but I get curious. And I think this curiosity is what you want to grow in your child or grow in yourself.
And birding something that almost anybody can do, right? You can look out of your window and you can see a bird and have that curiosity you spoke about, Musa.
That is correct.
Am I right in saying that as part of our Upton Hill programs, the Audubon Society lent us binoculars so that our kids could use them and learn to use that scientific tool?
That is absolutely right. Yes, we are definitely, partnering with all, friends and organizations to basically help the birds and the environment, bring people from underserved communities to our events, and just work to make where we live a better place.
Good job.
I actually have reached out to Yolanda. We did get a question in Spanish, so I'd like to know if she could maybe answer that for us, please.
Is it in the Q&A?
It should be, yes. Oh, and I put it in the chat box to you directly.
Oh, okay. Let me take a look.
Do you see?
Let me take a look. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, it's a little ways up there.
When you find it, could you read the question to us, please, Yolanda?
I will. I am still looking. Do you know?
It's at 8:04. 8:04 from. Let's see. Well, it's from me. It would be from me.
Okay, here we go.
Do you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I went the other direction. Oh, okay. So the question in Spanish is, where can I find an identification guide for birds in Spanish? So that's a really good question. So I was looking at Arlington's website, and there is a bird list for Arlington County. But that's just the list of birds, where you can check off an inventory of birds. But I don't know that there is a guide in Spanish. I mean, something we can certainly look into. and find out.
You'll need to write one, Yolanda,
Okay, done.
in your
So-
spare time.
Sure. So I can, I don't know if they want me to answer this in Spanish.
Yes, please.
Okay. La pregunta es, ¿dónde puedo comprar una guía de identificación de aves escrita en español? Lo siento que no tengo la respuesta a este momento, pero si lo encuentro, voy a ver si lo puedo conseguir. Y si no, pues a lo mejor lo tendremos que hacer de nuevo. We might have to create a bird guide in Spanish if there isn't one. So, all right.
Thank you. Okay, so we have another question. Phil asks, let's see, and it's not really a question. I lead bird walks for the Northern Virginia Bird Club, and this wonderful hobby ought to be enjoyed by more people of color. Just Google the club and join us at our twice weekly free walks. Just bring binoculars and follow info on our website. We have a walk at Long Branch at 8:30 on Wednesday, March 2nd.
Nice to know.
Yes,
an
it's really
information.
wonderful. The Northern Virginia Bird Club is a wonderful organization. It's the first organization when I moved to Virginia that I joined. I'm still a member. They do wonderful walks. They go to different parts of the region. Even if you're a beginner, just like Phil was saying, just bring your binocular and come. A great pleasure. And regular programs. And I think that's very important because sometimes you miss one time, and if there is not a regular program, you're probably just missed your chance. But you go online and you find the program and you sign up and you'll be part of them.
Great.
What if you don't have or can't afford binoculars? Can you still go and participate?
Well, I can't obviously speak for the Northern Virginia Bird Club. We at Audubon, we do have, if we have programs, we do have binoculars, and my guess is it's not going to be difficult to talk to them, and my guess is they will be able to. The Northern Virginia Bird Club will be able to find a binocular for you.
Great.
I have an answer for our guest looking for a Spanish bird guide. Caroline says that Kaufman's Bird Guide to North American Birds has an excellent Spanish version.
Terrific.
So look for Kaufman's with a K.
Good to know.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you.
Caroline. Let's see. Okay. Oh, Millie, can you talk a little bit about if somebody is interested or has a child who is interested in joining the Park Service or in your case the Forest Service? Any thoughts about that? Any advice?
Yes, it depends on the age of the child. If the child is very young, 4, 5, or 6 years old, it's very important to get them out in nature as much as possible. As I mentioned, my mom, she was a licensed practical nurse in the South with 3 children she was raising by herself. So we didn't have much money. So we just hop in the car and drive out in the country and maybe look at a stream or look at a tree or figure out why leaves were changing colors, just to get these youngsters out in nature. A little bit older, middle school age, they have got to know their science. Don't avoid those science classes when you get electives. Biology, chemistry, geography, geology, all of that. You really need to know your science. And you need to go to college, because to become a forester these days, you need at least a bachelor's degree, probably a master's, and a PhD is often in place. So know your science and have excellent communication skills, be able to get along with folks. One article I wrote was about how to survive in a white male dominated natural resource organization, and it talks about some things that parents can do with youngsters to help prepare them for careers in natural resources.
Thank you. We do have, we're coming to the end of question and answer. We do have one more anonymous question. Are there programs similar to this aimed at younger children to speak to the possibilities despite the challenges? I think that was aimed at working and being in nature. I'm sorry, it's sort of a throwback to another question from before.
So they're asking how to survive as a person of color in these organizations, as a pioneer, or?
I think so. Aimed at younger children is the key part of that one, I believe.
Well, we're lucky in Arlington because there is so much diversity. And I work at Carlin Springs Elementary, Barrett Elementary, and Montessori schools this year. And there's so much diversity. So it's a great nourishing grounds, if you will, to begin to foster those people-to-people relationships with people who are not identical to us. And meanwhile, someone has reminded me in the chat, don't forget math. When I say science, I mean science, technology, engineering, math, and art, STEAM. So you've got to know, have at least a familiarity with all of those and a passion for at least one of those to succeed as a forester per se. And I had mentioned earlier, there are a lot of different kinds of careers you can get in the Park Service and the Forest Service. So you don't have to just be a forester. We have master birders in the Forest Service. We have archaeologists. We have, again, geologists, and we have chemists. We have teachers in the Forest Service. We have the law enforcement people I talked about. So there are a lot of careers you can have that have to do with nature besides just being a forester.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I think we are going to draw the questions to a close now. I'm going to go ahead and put up something on my screen that lists a few of our resources we've discussed, just a few, because there have been so many. Okay, can we see that, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, we mentioned Arlington Regional Master Naturalists, Virginia Master Naturalists, Arlington Nature Centers, Audubon Society of Northern Virginia, NAACP, and Eco Action Arlington are just a few of the places where you can learn more about how to get out in nature and support it.
Yes. And certainly at our Arlington Public Library. We thank you so much for having us this evening and allowing us to just chat with folks. You know, some of these conversations aren't easy to have, but they're critically important to have.
Very true.
Thank you, Victoria, for having us. And Miss Vicki, I know you haven't spoken and you've had your camera off, but we really appreciate your help as well.
Behind the scenes help. Thank you.
That's
Yes.
right. Very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks
Feel
so much
free
to
to
our
reach out.
panelists. Let me just go ahead and put up, okay, so if you should be able to see the contact information for Melody, Musa, and Yolanda on my screen. Is there anything else anybody would like to add before we close out the evening?
I would. If you'd leave that slide up there, Victoria, that would be great, please, while the three of us just close with a thought or two.
Sure.
I just want to say it may not be the easiest profession to pursue, but it, for me, is the most rewarding profession to pursue. And so important. What's more important than our planet and our resources, natural resources that we have? So thank you again for hosting us this evening. Musa?
Yeah, thank you very much. If I would just sum up a few things, I think one easy thing to start with to get into nature or into birding is basically your own backyard. it's a wonderful, as you know, it's a wonderful family hobby. Even in winter, you could be sitting in the warmth of your kitchen or your balcony and looking at birds. It's of course always nice to go to nature, but in the absence of that, sometimes you try to take advantage of nature around you, whether from your kitchen or from your balcony, and of course always try your best to go out. I know we all get involved with life, and that sometimes is not always easy to do, but from your own to nature, I think that's something, you can find something there for everyone.
I'll just mention, like Melody said, it's a really rewarding type of activity, whether it's birding or other activities in nature. I have to say that the Regional Master Naturalist volunteers have been great people to work with, and it's a great community to be part of. I think people who really believe in the importance and appreciation of nature. And thanks, Victoria, for having us.
Thank
Absolutely.
you, Yolanda.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melody. Thank you, Musa. It's been amazing for me, and it's been a great presentation. I really appreciate you all being here and sharing your stories with us. Once again, this event is being recorded and will be available on the Arlington Public Library YouTube page for future viewing. It should be up within just a couple of days. So just wanted to do a quick shout out to everyone. Thank you. And thank you to all our participants for coming on. Thanks for everyone for asking such great questions. And thank you for supporting the library. We really appreciate it. Please check our online calendar, library calendar, for more events to come. And everybody have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Thank you,
everyone.
Victoria. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Okay.